All right, so this book was directed out to our chair people. So all of our chair people got this book for a Christmas gift, and I think the timing on it was right. It actually has a lot of great information from a business owner who is an EO member, is very familiar with peer groups, and I'm an EO with him at EO Philadelphia. So he wrote this book and put it out last year. So I'm going to just step you through the first half of the book today, so it shouldn't be too bad. Chris, feel free to ask a question, stop us in midst, whatever might work, if you'd like. Good to see you.
Hey, Dan. Yeah, good to see you guys. Yep.
Chris,
Chris?
you didn't happen to read this though, right?
No, I
Or did you?
don't. I have no clue.
Okay, good. No, that's fine. So we're used to that, by the way. This is like our sixth book where it's, I read, at least I read it right, and then I get it down into a PowerPoint. We cover the material. So and so this gentleman, Kevin Nolan, who wrote this book, he's based in Philadelphia, and let's see if I can make this work. Yeah, so he used Amy Lynch to help him write the book. He is an EO member. I don't know if you're familiar with EO, Chris. So it's Entrepreneurs Organization, very, kind of like Vistage, but better. So I like to say it since I committed my $10,000 to EO. So, but he is a business owner that has grown his business. So let's just walk through kind of the first half of the book. So we're going to do introduction and prologue first, talk about his company, what that looks like. And then we're really going to stay focused on about 7 topics today. One is the hourglass, which is another word for bottleneck, culture, structure, ops meeting, and the importance of it, and then planning, the customer, and we'll end today with cascading leadership, which is where we'll pick up next time for part 2. So at the second go round, when we have the second time we get together, we'll cover these topics. So this is talent, compensation, money, balance, business is messy, as well as exiting well, and it has to do with his succession in his business as well. So, a couple notes on the book. Everybody that has seen my book clubs probably enjoys this part because it's the Wikipedia portion of the book club discussion. So this thing was written just last year. I was given a copy in November. I read it all in like a month. I then took, went out and got myself, I want to say 20 copies or 25 copies, sent them out to all of our chair people running the peer groups because I felt it was pretty strong. I tried to get Kevin onto this program for today. I was not able to get him. The timing wasn't going to work. So he started his walk down consulting by sharing with his peers. So he was one of 89 paint contractors in the Philly market that got together, and he went through a little lesson for them. And that was really how he started getting into business development and how to work on your business versus in. And organizational management or organizational muscle is really, when it gets down to it, it's his operating system. So anybody who has seen Traction or EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, it's an example of, how do we do this business? What are we going to do? And welcome, Bruce. I see Bruce joined. And then lastly, muscle comes from enduring strength. So we're going to talk about what that means and how you might be having strength exercises in your business that will provide you with that muscle. All right. Okay, so first chapter is about the story of Nolan Painting. Loved it, was awesome. So 1979, he and his buddies start painting exteriors, and wasn't the best painter, and certainly didn't get things right away. And so he really, for a long time, he bounces around, not at the bottom, but definitely in a struggling small business. So getting started was just him and whoever he could put together. He had a partner initially, ends up dropping the partner, picks him up as an employee, right? So first smart move. And then he went from there. In the 80s, he suffered through the recession. He mentions the Gulf War, but I think Gulf War happened in like 90. But you could see that the business had dropped back down to about 10 employees at the time. So again, small paint company, just pushing through 10 years of effort. And he really is about 40 years old when he has a bit of a hope, little glimmers of hope. He starts having an epiphany. He starts running marathons, very similar to my story. I was the same age. And, I think I started playing guitar and started to run marathons just for fun. This guy went on to run a marathon in every state. So it's a little different. And then he also started to find out about leadership books. So he was reading leadership books. I think he went undergrad at Villanova, which is also where I was got my master's, and then really focused on mental exercise, working on his business versus in it. He knew operationally a little bit about what it means, how things can be different working in it versus on it. And he uses an example in this chapter about estimating a job versus doing a job. So if you think about that from a rental perspective, on the equipment rental side, you can give quotes, but they're going to be different than how you book. And then you're going to deal with, ready to rent. You're going to deal with the after effects of rental and getting it back ready to rent again, right? So you can work in the business, or you can work on the business and build some systems around it. He claimed that his turning point, really, which I totally aligned with as a business owner, was collecting brains. So, finding Lauren Kremen and then Charlie Peterson to help my business, I started to say, I'm not going to be the best at this. So that's where you have to look at different departments in your company and start collecting the brains for it. Obviously, Chris knows what I'm talking about when it comes to people management. So he's got that and covered for his company. Then he goes into growth and expansion mode in the late 90s. That also then went right into launching his consulting practice. Now, he still didn't have the magic bullet because, like anybody else, he got affected by the recession and he dropped back down to 23 painters. So as you follow the story, you do realize he grows to a $20 million operation, which, residential painting is, to do that, you're going to have a lot of economies of scale, right? So what does that look like? So how does he build the op structure to do that? So he reads the book, The E-Myth. Anybody here read the book, The E-Myth? Mm-hmm. Charlie, you should have.
Yeah, back in the day.
So E-Myth was like precursor to EOS and scaling up and all that good stuff. And really, it was about working on the business versus in it. It was about McDonaldizing your company and focusing on, any problem you ever had. It was a broken system. So what's the system that's broke that's causing this issue in our company? So it's really the first time he starts to really start getting this idea about organizational muscle. He also became chairman of the board at the Mainline Chamber of Commerce, which I'm very familiar with. I grew up in the market. And it was, again, now he's in a governance position. He's not the expert. He's the moderator, facilitator for a whole bunch of experts, right? So he's starting to get a better and better sense of what it means to get out of your own way and all that stuff. So he's reading books and he goes on and lists a number of good books here, which involved EOS and traction and things like that. He very much focuses on an open book management system, which that concept has been around forever. It basically means I'm going to share my data with my employees. And that could be financial data, right? So that you're able to benefit from any and all help that you can get inside your organization. He talks about creating structure. We're going to talk about that in the chapter coming up here. One of the things he did, which I thought was great, was, hey, let's apply for best place to work, right? And there's a lot of reasons to do that. It's not just about getting the recognition. I mean, you have to fill in an app, and the app says, do you do this, 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 and this? Well, guess what? It's all good stuff, right? You implement in order to say you do it on the app and get qualified for best place to work. You fill it in. It's going to be helpful to you. So that was one of the things that happened. And of course, he filled it in and he got in best place to work right away. One thing I thought about with our Cheers for Peers and all the goodwill that our rental members do out in the community, they have a thing called Nolan in the Neighborhood, which was great. He has all these employees, and each one of them have like a special thing that they do for that's a meaningful to them. And so they started to really focus on that. And I think they dedicate a certain percentage of all revenue to this Nolan in the Neighborhood, which now has taken on a little bit more heft as a nonprofit type of experience. Giving money to good works in the area. He then touches on family legacy and transitioning to his children. And then, of course, best place to work, 21, he gets that. COVID is also a period that they determine their systems start to thrive and they do okay. And ultimately, they end with, he wants to leave the company well. He doesn't want to sell to a third party. He wants to have structure in place. So that gets us to chapter 1, which is that's focused on the system. So the first system is the Hourglass, and it talks about bottlenecks in your company, which are process oriented, and expanding the neck. He feels, this is him, is driven by empowered decision making. So I feel, not vindicated. I feel the opposite of that by saying, like, yeah, I like to be in on a lot of decision making. It doesn't necessarily help your company become more strong from a muscle perspective, right? So that's a concern. I will say that the real problem is for him, it was owner as problem solver. So the longer the owner is the problem solver, you're going to run into these problems. And he also takes an aside and starts talking about negative self-talk, which, again, if you have one person making decisions, that one person is going to have negative self-talk at some point, and the company is going to, suffer for that. So that was one of the other things he mentioned in this section. Decide to be the CEO and wear one hat. That was a big thing for him. I don't know, Chris, in your organization, do you guys have a visionary and a integrator, or how do you guys operate?
Yeah. Hey, Dan, and sorry about that. I had my mic off. We follow EOS and Traction. Kurt Decatur is our owner and visionary. And Leonard is right behind him as the doer, right? And the person who's responsible, making things happen. So
awesome. Yeah, and sometimes when that bleeds over, it can create some structure issues or difficulties. I know from our perspective at peer groups, I am supposed to be the visionary and Charlie's supposed to be the integrator, but I'm messing in this business all the time, right? Charlie will not agree with me on that. So anyway, so fight your way out of this hourglass, right? Get yourself into that position. So really, if I think about it, hourglass, for those who've read Traction, is that fight between visionary and integrator. He talks at the end about something called the primary aim, which we don't get into in traction, but it is the number one thing that happens inside email. So the primary aim is really um, establishing kind of like, here's what everything looks like 10 years from now, or whatever it might be. It's like this future look that says, I walk like this, I talk like this, I'm doing these things with my time. This is the landscape I'm in, and I had early in my career, I had a partner and he had this vision of himself walking a warehouse floor with his arms folded, right? So that was his whole, and he couldn't get that vision out of his head. So what he was trying to say with that was that he would not be a doer, but he would be a builder and a kind of like a walk around guy, right? So he'd just be watching people doing. And it served us well because it always reminded us to kick him out or kick him up so that he would not be in the do. And instead he would be kind of like walk around management style, right? So that kind of thing. Do you guys, Chris, do you have anything related to your long-term VTO, your long vision that is similar? Like where's Kurt in the whole picture down the road? Or he probably doesn't even get a mention in the VTO, right? Or
Well, and we've established those roles that with the integrator and him being the visionary, and it is difficult at times to separate the two. I think what we fall back on a lot is quit working, in the business and on the business. But
yeah,
I think that it's difficult at times to not get involved and truly to delegate, and you got to delegate, right? So
yep, yep, absolutely. And that's a big part of what you see happen. Again, anybody that's going to take a small business with two painters and all of a sudden do 20 million of house painting, it's got to be economies of scale, right? And other people making decisions. So systems, processes, and people he gets into. And lastly, cascading leadership, which is how we're going to end this morning's session or this afternoon session. So also in this chapter, he talks about trust, which is really hard for a lot of people, right? So understanding how you can trust your people, set them on a course, push them off, let them make it happen, and trust that you're going to get the results. It allows you, if you have trust, you have the ability to kind of move, trust but verify, right? So you want to be able to move into another area and know it's good. Balance, growth, and succession are also identified, and um, they talk about pieces of the puzzle, which is a view from outside the hourglass. He used some consulting support and services to kind of also give him gap assessments of his business at that time. So each chapter in this book ends with a takeaway, which I love. Anytime there's a book that says, "Oh, chapter one's over, and this is what is," so they say, write your primary aim. It gives you a little bit direction on that. Write a vision for your company, build your systems and write it down. And what I think he means by that is probably the core processes, very similar to EOS. Develop cascading leadership. We'll get to that in a minute, but essentially it has to do with communication beyond the leadership team, right? Seek balance, control growth, and plan out succession. So just a few small items, right, in that first chapter that he's looking for you to have. Goes into culture next, and this one he really he's all in now on scaling up and traction and all that. Vision, mission, and values repeat. So his feeling, and I did appreciate this, in EOS, how frequently do you review the VTO? So I'll ask Charlie, how frequently do we review the VTO?
We do it at our annual, and we brush
Annual.
over it on the quarterly.
Yep. How about you, Chris?
same, yep. We dig in, and do we want to change the core values? Here they are, and we have that discussion every year. Oh.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's good. So vision, where you're going, make it specific. He talks about it being like a compass. And then the mission really is your purpose. So he kind of, I feel he did a good job on that early in his business. He kind of said, this is kind of the difference between us and other people. So he talks about, so down below here, you'll see undervalues promise. And so he's talking about how, like, they're going to be the happy painters. They're going to be the ones that are going to, greet you and do all these things differently. So that was really focused around, you know, bringing happiness and joy as they're painting your house or whatnot. The values, he says, sources of passion and muscle. It was a word that he used. I thought that was interesting. Sources of passion and muscle. So he's looking at these four values. Interesting enough, I think he came up with these and then verified them with his leadership team. We talk about this all the time with traction. Where do values come from? So as you might know, Chris, we like to look at it as like these two employees, they are our values, right?
Yeah.
They're the ones that we like, their certain characteristics. So he chose best place to work, friendly, accountable, and transparency. And then he had the book QBQ, which is question before something. I knew I should never use initials like that. Right?
Acronyms.
Yeah, check it out, Charlie.
I'm Googling currently.
Pretend we're on a radio show and you're going to find out what QBQ is.
Fifth caller with the right answer.
Question
behind the question.
Question before question.
Behind the question. Question behind the
question. Question behind the question. Got it.
Yep.
Thank you. Very good. Why and when are bad questions to ask, and how and what are good questions to ask, right? So that's kind of the concept. And then last was transparency. So, and not transparency like calling individuals out. And when you get to this next section about structure, you'll see what I mean. Like this guy's got meetings coming out the yin yang, but it's pretty interesting because I'm like, is he using transparency in the meetings in a negative way? But he doesn't. So, so the culture is also the company backbone, and it's the positive drama of the company versus the negative, right? So if you can stay focused on what you consider your culture, it could be a positive thing. So, like any of these chapters, he ends with the takeaways. So his thing is, now you're going to communicate your vision. You're going to articulate your mission, and you're going to identify your core values. And this will be the beginning of managing your culture. You're going to control the drama, make it positive, right? Not negative, and repeat and rinse, right? So the idea is he's going to now start talking about structure and how you get that message repeated over time. So any questions so far?
It's amazing how close some of this stuff is to EOS.
He did a good job of, to me, there was enough difference in the book to make it. I mean, again, he's a local boy. He's small business, 20 million or whatever. Now he's a bigger business. But I feel like anytime somebody takes a little twist to it, because we all know we love traction, but, right? And we know we love E-Myth, but, and we, so there's always seems to be a but. So it's when somebody does a little bit of a twist on it. I don't know if I buy into everything on this, but you'll see some really good understanding or explanation. This particular page I really like. So early example of structure shaping in his company. Structure. Start time, let's set it. No like stopping at Wawa and getting your coffee, beyond this certain time. Pay is on a Friday and pay the boss first. Right? I like that one. I need to remember that one. That's good. And then meetings. Really, like, we don't do a good job. I don't know, Chris, what your place looks like, but that is structure, right? Meetings are structure. So what are the meetings and what happens in these meetings? So he did not, in his chapter, he didn't have it broken down like this. I kind of grabbed this out of the book and built this, and I'm sitting here going, oh yeah, financial, sales, and Charlie knows that our company just implemented a monthly financial meeting. We didn't have one. We never had one. We always looked at it like every couple months, but we never had a financial meeting. Now we do. Certainly sales seems like an easy one. People are going to be focused on that. And then he talks about weekly block meetings. These are things that he wants on the calendar every week. And I thought it was great. It seemed, when you read it, it sounds like a lot. Recruiting, training, HR, pre-ops. So they have this huge ops meeting, which is 6 o'clock on a Wednesday morning, and they have a pre-ops meeting on Tuesday in prep for that meeting. And I thought that was brilliant. It was like, and Charlie and I talk about it all the time, but we don't get it right. Like, we want the to-dos to be looked at before we get to the meeting, right?
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff. And then
lastly, and for him, when you're deploying that many painters on a daily basis, you got to be doing pre-ops, right? So you know where everybody's going before they're turned loose.
Yeah, and it's neat to see he actually includes the agendas for each of these, so you can kind of get a sense of it. Again, love it. Love that type of look inside of another company, right? So the ops meeting involved a breakout into teams. So they do it virtually on Zoom, and then the teams break out because obviously they're doing 20 million, right? So they're going to have multiple teams in ops. And we'll get into, I don't know if I put the ops agenda in here. I hope I did, but the marketing meeting, safety meeting. Now, the marketing meeting is different than the sales meeting. So that was a good, very clear that, marketing was about communicating brand. And, we think about a company like that, it's a residential painting company. So how do you market? What's that look like? Safety, CEO prep, which again is cool because that means that he's having a meeting with his assistant to kind of get his stuff together prior to the group. I like that idea. And you see that with bigger companies, right? So he uses the phrase PAL, and that comes from another book. I forget the name of the book, but Purposeful Agenda with a Set Length. So for those of us who work in traction, we know we've got a purposeful agenda, but there are a lot of meetings where they don't have a purposeful agenda, right? Like they kind of do, but not really. It's more like a check-in. And then he talks about structure as it relates to training and learning. So up to this point, we really are focusing on meetings being structure, right? That's the bones of the company is these meetings. Well, then he adds in, what about training and learning? And what's the difference between training and learning, right? So they start a person as an apprentice, move them to first painter, second painter, all that kind of stuff. And then they have learning, which has more to do with leadership and, development, management, all those types of things. Yeah. So he identified some subs there, learning paths and leadership competencies. So it's a good way to look at it. There's examples in the book, so I can pull those out, Charlie, and we can look at them too. There's structure for safety, the structure for accountability. How does that apply? So if you think about it, all we're talking about here is what are the bones or the inner structural pieces to our company. So if you think about bottom line equipment, you can almost look at this and say, what is the gap assessment of our bones? How strong are our bones, right? So you can say, well, a safety meeting would look like this. We meet every week and all this kind of stuff happens, but this is where we are, right? So you can kind of do these gap assessments on your structure as it relates to the meeting in spinal section of the company, right? So I like it. I think, when I think of our business, Charlie, I think of, that every time we try to qualify whether the L10 is good or not, right? We're on a scale of 1 to 10, and we're going to get it right from a start on time, end on time perspective. But we also can look at it and say, are we creating rocks that are tied to our overall goals, and are they serving the company well?
Yeah.
Or are we just burying ourselves with like documentation, or can it be something that's going to be useful to us? All right. Any questions on that? So these are the takeaways. Decide what meetings you need. So he wants you to kind of go through that mindset. He wants you to rank them and then schedule them and create written agendas format, and then consider what other structures you might need. So he talks about employee reviews, performance path. What are you going to do? So, I do one-on-ones with the employees, and we do what I say quarterly conversations. So it might be something to the effect of, tell me about your performance path and what that looks like over the next 90 days, year. What are you going to look like a year from now? What are you going to put in place? And Lauren might remember we used to have meetings where I'd be like, Lauren Kremen, what's Lauren want to do with her life? Where's she going to go? So that's the kind of thing where you have to think about those questions and then apply it and then go toward them, right? So that's more performance path. All right. So this is the big one, and we're getting closer to the end now, the first half of the book. This is what he talks about with regard to an operations meeting. Surprising amount of content inside this little teeny book, right? It's only 270 pages or something like that. So this was the meat of his main company, of the company, right? So he decided 6 a.m. is the way to go. So 6 a.m. on Wednesday. People are in, they're ready for action, they have their coffee and their donut, and it's just once a week they do this. But it because of the pre-work and the pre-ops meeting, this ends up being a good meeting. So you establish the rules of the game, which happened the first meeting they had. How are we going to do this? Who's participating in it, all that stuff. Has to be positive energy. You can't have negative energy. It ties back to the values, which I think was good. And in it, he starts to, so he takes the lead on the first couple of points. And then with the customer reports, he starts to move and let other people talk, right? So who's going to talk about the customer reports? Somebody's going to step up and talk about the customer reports, right? And I work with an operator down in rental operation down in Florida who I see this. I see each leader on the leadership team steps up and takes a portion of the discussion. They try to stay inside the L10 format, 555, all that good stuff. But customer reports, let's talk about it. Monthly goals, feet on the street, which feet on the street is, I want to say that had to do with operation.
That is like his actual painters, wouldn't it be? Or like the guys doing the work?
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember the context.
Maybe visibility, management visibility at all levels, maybe? I don't know. The location.
Yeah, that's probably it. It's the ability to have that transparency through the organization at that point. So
yeah,
what's happening out there? Yes, it has to do also with the environment they're in, right? Like,
yeah.
Gosh, we just suffered through 2 weeks of rain. It's April. We're getting killed, and well, what can we do? How can we, improve the situation? But it was literally like, this is what's going on in the marketplace, right? It could be that the Phillies are in the World Series and something's going on that month or something. He builds out a reporting format, which I thought was pretty cool, and he's just stuck with it. So think, for those of us in EOS, think like data. So Charlie will tell you, we are not committed to metrics and data. We were, and then it became old, So we're like, okay, so where are we at right now? So right now, I would say we're in year 3 of EOS, and we just got to refresh. I want to throw out all the data, and I want to restart over and say, what do we care about weekly? What we built it over time, and we started this and stopped that. And I don't know, how are you guys using data in your business right now?
Yeah, so it's integrated into our L10s and the measurables, and we really that's a critical part of what we do. And it's interesting, we probably pull 2 or 3 metrics from the department meetings. So in HR, I've got 10 or 12 metrics. I pull 3 main ones and bring that into the open positions, turnover rate, and something else. And then we go over all of those, and that's about probably 16 or 18 very important ones included in that are rental revenue, utilization, that kind of thing. So all of that gets pulled in to our main meeting. But yeah, we've had the same metrics. We really, I think the emphasis on what our owner says, what you don't, it's what you inspect, not what you expect.
Yeah.
And he really, he and Leonard take a real proactive role in sitting in without our knowledge on the L10s to monitor them. I mean, it's known that they could be on our L10 at any time. And that really brings up the level of
Quality.
accountability to the department managers. And so, yeah, back to what you were saying, the metrics are still very important. We haven't thrown them all away and started over. And we probably have some on there that need to be revised. So
Yeah, and I think for me, and Charlie knows this about me, I'm looking at it more from a perspective of should there be an action taken, right? So let's look at that metric. Does there need to be an action taken around that metric that we're measuring?
Mhm.
Like it's underperforming over and over and over, and we know it, and so our expectations off. Is there something internal that we have just continue to ignore every week? So I think that's what it is. But I digress. We'll move on from that. So he goes into having an agenda and sticking to it. So every time he's ever had this great idea to come off of the agenda, he's regretted it. He's like, didn't need to do it. You think this is going to be a nice, left-hand turn, and it's just not, for him. So he's like, just stick to the agenda. You can always do a different meeting about different topic if you need to. And that's something I struggle with. I know I pull a soft agenda every once in a while. And then really taking time to identify all challenges and opportunities, which could be considered issues, right? And say, did we get all the issues down? Charlie, you probably noticed this week, I went out, I had my meeting with my coach before the meeting. So I had like 3 or 4 issues that were, that I was able to put in there that were valuable and we actually got into, right? So
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said for making sure you got the challenges and opportunities lined up. Okay, so takeaways on this chapter were really, if you're not doing it, prepare for and run a great meeting. We have a tendency to think everybody's doing this, right? Have a written agenda and share it. Create a reporting format. Make it safe. So, safe environment means that people can speak up and not, get beat up on it, right? So
That was on your EO thing you shared the other day.
psychological safety, basically, right? So engage multiple voices. That was a key one for me. I think that we're lacking that in our L10. And then create engagement opportunities and set your expectations. So he makes that particular meeting special by putting it in there. Now, this is the last. We do planning and then we do cascade planning. So with planning, the chapter talks about plan the year before it starts. He was adamant, and I've never thought of this, but now I'm getting it. Like plan it in the fourth quarter.
December,
Don't plan it.
right? Yeah.
Because we wait until the first quarter and we're like, we're up against the wall already. We're like,
Yep.
oh, we only got 2 months to get this done.
I did an annual with a group the other day, Dan, and we were talking through that, and we were planning our rocks for the first quarter, and we were talking about 90 days, and they're like, wait a minute, it's February. These are 60-day goals. Like,
yeah.
And that totally makes sense, right? Like we should be doing annual plans in November, December.
Yep. I totally agree. Well, he also talks about himself getting like a run on it, get it ahead of the curve on it. But then he stops everything and he gets a total agreement on the goals. So he doesn't want to sign off on the goals or the big rocks without his leadership team all signing off on it. So that was cool. Review the past, look at the SWOT, take those things. Test the vision, mission, values. So just like you do in traction. Establish big rocks and goals, and then he actually pivots and starts going into assumption financial budget, right? So if you're making certain plans for the company, there's going to be a financial impact for that, and in a lot of cases it's cash flow related. So what does that mean? Like we talked, Charlie, about financing. We had a line of credit line up. Do we need that? Should we use this other account as a line of credit? Or if we were going to invest in more body count, we would have needed done the line of credit, right? So that's part of figuring all that out before the year starts. And certainly I'm guessing bottom line is going to be in that boat, right? Got to really be on top of that. Pay for performance. Interesting. I never considered that. I think there's a piece of me that says, oh, the ideal structure is 25% variable compensation. I've always had that thing, but to actually like say, let's talk about like what it means to achieve this goal. What's in it for you financially? What can you, get from this structure, right? And I know I don't spend the time on it. I figure it out by the third and fourth quarter, but I'm certainly not there in quarter one and going, which I've seen people do it and I've seen people struggle with it, but I think you need to try to do it, right? And then lastly, this one's another good one. What structure do we have to relook at? What's going on with the bones of the company? I never think of that as part of your annual planning process, right? Like what's working and what's not working. That's an easy conversation, right? Why aren't we including that in our annual planning? But I like that he had that in there, so that was cool. So, this is cascade planning. So the idea is that you're moving it down through the annual planning down to the next level departments. So create the annual plan, start process in the fourth quarter, have it be done by 12/31, perform the SWOT, establish rocks, establish KPIs. Looks familiar, right? Establish quarterly business planning process again, day, and then publish it to the employees, right? And that he hasn't gotten into this, but one of the things that we don't do well in EOS, or a lot of our members in rental don't do well, is State of the Union.
Yeah.
And State of the Union, for some reason, maybe it happens once a year, but it's something that needs to happen every year at the very least. I don't know what the best way to do that. Maybe at your stage, Chris, you guys do a video now, or what's it look like?
Well, we've grown rapidly, and one of our big issues is communicating, objectives to the employees out there, the masses. And it's not just annual objectives, which are extremely important, but also you go back to communicating your vision, values, all of those things that you look for in employees, and you want them to understand. And a real quick overview during their first day of a mini orientation just didn't get it. And so we're trying to come up with a more organized orientation approach once a month, where we have a day-long program that really tries to get those employees acclimated and honed in and understand what we're about and how we work and that kind of thing. And, I think we'll improve in that area. But as far as, publishing, I'd love to see us take what comes out of the annual meeting with traction and get a condensed version of that and push that out to all the employees, so.
Yeah, I mean, I could see a company like yours would probably benefit from some video production, because you got people everywhere. And, at the end of the day, nobody wants to read something, it's all come down to short video form.
Absolutely. We've got a few individuals who want to push an IT self-training platform on everything. And the truth is, unless, at least my perception is, if you're not engaged, you're not gonna absorb anything, and you're always
Right.
going to get distracted or press stop or try to cheat the little video or whatever, and take the test. And if we can't have face-to-face people in one room, then it's got to be virtual with them paying attention and us monitoring that. That's my view of it. So
That's great.
Yeah.
Agreed. I think the way to go. Okay, so I thought that was the end. It's not. Here we go. So so the customer.
You got 8 minutes till my next call.
All right, the experience. So this customer is a great chapter. Charlie, I'm going to send it to you. So it has to do with the customer experience. So what is the vision? What do we expect to happen? And I kind of went through this a bit with Charlie today, thanks to Kurt DeGeeter did a great referral for us, and we picked up another Louisianian today, which is great. But we walked them through kind of what's going to happen next. So it's that experience, knowing how to verbally and visually show them what they can expect from us, and hopefully pull them into becoming a raving fan and staying there. Right? Like, oh, I had this great experience, and I got a kit in the mail, and it had like a water bottle and all this good stuff, and I'm really into the company and all this stuff.
Let's hope they stick around for more than the water bottle.
Yeah. Did you get a water? I didn't get a water bottle. And then best practices. This is a good one. Like, what is our best practices when it comes to interacting with the customer? So he has this list, like saying hello, saying goodbye, using names, being friendly, setting the tone, check the box. Like, these are physical things you're going to do so that people get a sense of who we are versus somebody else, right? Loved it. And then there's a customer satisfaction system, which is built in. So it says, not only are we going to do these first three things, but we're also going to measure and monitor it, and we're going to repeat it back to them. So we know what our net performance score, right? Or what's it called? Net promoter score is.
Yeah.
So we have the ability to present that back and say, hey, FYI, everybody, we're sounds like we're moving the right direction. We want you to refer peer groups to others, and it sounds like you're saying that. So thank you. The power of the reputation, what that means. Happy customer under budget. Those are his two goals. If he has to choose one, it would be to have a happy customer. So does a good job with that. And then now that you've got all that customer experience, how do you market it? Get the word out. So in the case of Lauren will crank out testimonial after testimonial after testimonial, because we want people to recognize the end game. We have happy customers, people who are getting things done in their business because of peer groups, right? So, and then lastly, branding. I think there's one more page on this. Yeah. So then, how do you invest in marketing? What should you invest in marketing? What's that look like? You want to grow your business from marketing if you can. Community-based marketing really is understanding your place in your environment, in your community. How you deal with unhappy customers, write up best practices around that, right? So he created avoiding problems. He created a star system. And so if you got a star, I think if you got a star, then you're to be avoided at all costs. So they had customers that they would fire from their business because they're like, no matter what we do, we're never going to please this one. So we need to move on. Intelligent neglect was a concept they talked about. Attitude, breaking stuff, like what's in seriously, like breaking stuff. Like we paint in people's houses. What do we do when it comes to breaking stuff? What's the chain of command? What is our response in lawsuit environment? Emotional intelligence he gets into, and that was cool. They had training for even the lowest level on how to stop and count to 8 before you reply to a customer's comment who's standing in front of you, right? So it's like they practiced it. Otherwise, you have hotheads that are blowing off steam, and you're dealing with putting out fires you don't need to put out, right?
Right.
And then lastly, you had reputation and report cards. So, customer, define your customer in the market, script the sales process, consider community-based marketing, script the customer experience, track where your customer is coming from, help the team learn about emotional intelligence. That's that last part. Find your voice, budget for marketing, right? All good stuff. Last chapter on this one, cascading leadership. This is pretty short. It's really just making sure that you're communicating the values and vision down to every level. So if I am meeting with my leadership team, do I know they've adopted our values? How about down here? What's going on there? They know what to do, how to do it, communication up and down, conversations with employees, responsibilities. Time span was an interesting concept. So he actually meant time span, like we're going to let this guy make his own decisions and do his own thing for a week, but we better check in with him every week. He can't go 2 weeks. Well, or this one's a director. We can let the director direct for 90 days, right? So it's this time span of deciding how long you can leave an employee alone. And then there's other guys, they need to be every day. They're just going to be part of the crew, and they just need to be part of every day. But that was an interesting concept. Org chart, first 2 weeks, behavioral profile. That was interesting. You were talking about, things like culture index or disc profiling, but they actually used also the genesis of that information, which is actually the behavior, and say, this is what we would expect you to be like in an environment with a customer. The learning path was one. They talked about chain of command. They talk about job titles and why they're important. Senior management, teams and logos, because again, from a perspective of economies of scale, we've adopted that in peer groups. I don't know that it has a place inside Bottom Line, but every one of our groups has its own name. Some of them have logos and have T-shirts and hats, and it's always cool to see them do that. And it gives them, our ability to talk about that particular group or engage them. They're not vanilla, right? We know that they're banana colored. So that comes into play. All right. Training, crucial conversation skills. And the takeaways really are do the org chart, look at it, continue to do the org chart. Org chart of the future, right? So there'll be roles that people will be in 2 different boxes. Job descriptions, manuals, training plans, always refreshed, always revised. You're looking at, does this apply? Is it the best way that we can consider our employees? This whole use published values, that's the whole behavior analysis or people analyzer, right? Do you guys use the people analyzer, Chris?
Yep. GWC, people analyzer.
Nice. Get it, want it, have the capacity to do it. Develop ongoing training programs. Think about what that means for every level in your company. Establishing career paths, building a management team. This slide would be good for your HR group. And then practice giving feedback, right? So, gap assessment. How am I doing versus how I want to be doing in these 6 or 7 areas, right? That kind of thing. All right. Any questions about that? I think that's it for this time. Thank you for hanging in there, Chris. We'll give you
Yeah.
So the nice thing is in an hour you got through half the book. So now we just have to get through the
That's
other
right,
half.
there
You
you
know.
go.
If y'all will give me a couple days, I might be able to catch up with you. Let's put it that way.
There you
We'll
go.
give you some time. I think we're going to do this in March, right, Lauren?
Yes. Yep.
To
The next
establish
one
it
is,
out there.
yep, 1 month from today.
Excellent.
Real good stuff, Dan. I appreciate it, and it's awesome material, and just fits right in line with what we're doing. So
Very cool. Well, we appreciate you being here. Thanks, Chris.
Yep.
All right, take care, guys.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.